It's a Mailbag Friday on the podcast. Going to be answering your questions, talking about Vaughn Grissom possibly moving to the outfield. We'll talk about the new rule changes that are be coming next year as well and how that could affect some of the Braves pitchers. And then got a lot of questions about the postseason as well that we'll cover, including the starting rotation and Marcell Ozuna's role. And then we'll set you up for this weekend series against the Seattle Mariners. All of that on a Friday episode of Lockedon Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I am your host, Jake Mastroianni. You can follow me on Twitter at ShortstopBall and check out my bio there to see where I'm covering the game of baseball, including the Atlanta Braves in written form over at TomahawkTake.com, where I've been the co-editor for several years. Also, make sure you follow the podcast on Twitter at LockedOn_Braves. Send in any questions, comments, or feedback you have for the podcast. And just like today, I'm going to be answering those questions. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube as well. Hit that thumbs up button on this video and that notification bell so you get notified whenever I post a new video. And thanks for making Locked On Braves your first listen each and every day. We post episodes daily, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and are free and available on all platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. On today's episode, this is going to be a full mailbag episode, going to be answering your Twitter questions, talking about Vaughn Grissom, talking about some rule changes, postseason rosters, and got a question about the upcoming series between the Braves and the Mariners and two young studs that'll be matching up in that series, and Julio Rodriguez and Michael Harris. So going to cover a lot on today's episode. Let's jump right into it with the first question. This one coming from Three Boys Dad on Twitter. He said, could Grissom play some right field when Ozzie gets back if Ronald's knee is still bothering him? The simple question or answer to that is yes. The Braves have been working him in the outfield. I think we'll definitely see Grissom play some outfield in the regular season once Ozzie Albies returns. And, it's a great point, and I mentioned it on yesterday's podcast, the fact that Ronald's needing that DH spot right now. When we talked about this, a week ago, we thought when Ozzie comes back, you can put Vaughn Grissom in the DH role and play him there and still get him at bats. But with Ronnie really needing that DH spot at the moment, and I would imagine they're going to try to manage him pretty well down the stretch here and keep him in that DH spot to make sure that he's as healthy as can be for the postseason, you're going to have to find a place for Vaughn Grissom in one of the corner outfield spots, whether it be left or right field. And I definitely think he's going to at least get a chance there. Now, look, they're putting Marcell Ozuna out in left field right now because Ronald is taking up that DH spot. I cannot imagine that a young athletic guy like Vaughn Grissom can at least play a decent outfield comparable to Marcell Ozuna. So if they're willing to put Ozuna out there, I gotta imagine they're at least willing to take a chance on putting Vaughn Grissom out there. So I do think once Ozzie Albies returns, that we will see Vaughn Grissom get some opportunities in one of the corner outfield spots, whether it be left field or right field. I mean, in right field right now, they're putting out Robbie Grossman, who I think has done a fine job defensively, but I wouldn't even say that he's probably above average. I'd say he's average. And then Eddie Rosario, despite the ridiculous play that he made in the World Series last year, where he just threw his glove up and prayed that the ball landed in there, he's not really a great outfielder either. So it's not like the corner outfields for the Braves right now are great defensively, and the options are not great. So I think it's at least worth taking a shot to see what you can do with Vaughn Grissom, and he has been working out there just for that scenario. I also talked about this yesterday. No reason to rush Ozzie Albies at this point because Grissom is hitting. You can play him at second. Ozuna has been hitting since he's been inserted back into the lineup. So there's no reason to rush Ozzie back at this point. I think you just kind of let things play out. But again, when Ozzie does comes back, I think you have the outfield as an option for Vaughn Grissom. Next question comes from Mary Jessup. Says, with Ian Anderson's recent rough outings in AAA, how likely do you think it is he makes it back before postseason, since that was initially the plan for him? I'm going to push back on the last part of that question a little bit. I mean, I think that was the hope for the Braves to send him down and then him come back later this year. I know that was certainly the hope. I don't know if that's necessarily the plan, though. I think the plan is to just send him down, let him work on some things, and then once he figure those out and once he's ready, then you bring him back, whether that's this year or next year. For me, that was the plan from the beginning. And I'll go ahead and mention Ian Anderson started on Thursday night, 5 1/3, only 4 hits this time after giving up 9 hits and 10 hits respectively in his last 2 outings, but 4 walks. And that to me is the more concerning thing, because even in his last 2 outings where he's given up a lot of hits, the walks have been down. And that's been one of the big problem areas for Ian Anderson, is the command and the walk. So 4 walks, a bit concerning. Gave up 4 earned runs, had 5 strikeouts, gave up a home run through 96 pitches, 56 of them for strikes. So again, another outing where you look at the stat line for Ian Anderson and it's not great. So right now, I just don't see Ian Anderson being in the picture for the rest of this season and the postseason. I mean, it's going to have to be a pretty quick turnaround. I don't see him being a guy that comes out of the bullpen. So I don't really think he feels that need. If you wanted somebody as, a long reliever in the postseason just to have on your roster, I think he could play that role. You also have Mike Soroka, who could potentially be playing that role as well. I think Kyle Muller right now is a better option than Ian Anderson, and even Bryce Elder. I mean, it's crazy to think, but at this point, I think those guys have jumped over Ian Anderson a little bit as far as the pecking order of starting pitching. So again, in full disclosure, I'm not watching these outings in AAA, and we don't know exactly what he's working on down there. So it's hard to just take the results that you see in the box score and really apply them to how well he's doing down there, whether good or bad. But based on those box scores and what we've seen, I just don't see a way that Ian Anderson gets back on this roster right now, unless a couple of injuries happen. And let's hope that is not the case. So last time I did my postseason roster, I put Ian Anderson on there because he's been so great in the postseason. Again, I'm not completely ruling that out, but I think more than anything, Ian Anderson just needs time. He needs time to develop, to work on his command, to work on those secondary pitches. And when he does come back, hopefully he has that all figured out, can put it together and become, a middle to top of the rotation arm once again, like we've seen. Again, still just very young is Ian Anderson. But for me, the plan when sending him down was to give him time to work on things, to work on his secondary pitches. And until that happens, there's just really not a spot for him on the roster. Next question comes from Jim Millard. He says, how do you see the pitch clock affecting the Braves and the strategy? It seems like the time clock is bound to create more base runners and steals. Good for guys like Michael Harris, bad for guys like Kenley Jansen. Kenley Jansen is obviously the slowest when it comes to delivering the ball and gives up a lot of steals because of that. Kenley Jansen is not going to be a part of this Braves team next year. Maybe he pitches again. I don't think it's for the Braves. I think when the Braves traded for Raisel Iglesias, it was to have a secondary option in case, Kenley gets injured this year. And I think it's because Iglesias is going to be the closer in the years to come. You're not going to be paying 2 guys, over $15 million at the back of your bullpen. I just don't see the Braves doing that. So when these rules go into effect next year, I don't really see it being a problem for many of the Braves pitchers because Kenley Jansen's not going to be a part of that. AJ Minter and Jim was nice enough to send me a graph on the pitch times for these pitchers. AJ Minter was the second slowest, so maybe something to look at there. Maybe if he becomes the closer or gets some save situations, but I don't see it being a big deal. And I did just want to mention this real quickly about the rules changes. So it's expected, and I was kind of recording a little later today, hoping to get the official word on this. It's expected that there are going to be several rule changes voted on to be put in place next year. One of them being the pitch clock, another being larger bases, and one being a change to defensive shifts. I think the pitch clock is great. I'm somebody who I cover the college baseball level as well, and also obviously watch a lot of minor league baseball. I think the pitch clock is great, and I barely notice it when I'm watching a game. When I go to a minor league game here in Birmingham, I never notice it. When I'm watching college games, I barely notice it, except for the very rare times where a pitcher is called out on it and is issued a ball. So, it'll take some adjustment, but I think once players do adjust to it and hopefully umpires actually enforce it, I think we'll see a much better game. Again, for me, it's not about the time, the length of a game, it's the pace of action. And that's really where the game has gotten away from it over the last several years, really the last couple of decades now, is there's no action. There's a lot of pitchers walking around the mound. There's a lot of batters stepping out to adjust themselves and adjust their batting gloves, which is just not necessary at all. And I think if you can cut that out of the game and quicken the pace of action, I think you're going to see a much better product on the field. Larger bases, I hope it does, create some more stolen bases in the game. I think that would be great. And I think the Braves would benefit from that. They have a lot of guys who can steal some bases. The defensive shifts is one. I got to see exactly what the rules are and how that's going to play out. But I'm indifferent on that one. Again, I'll have to see more of what that actually looks like. But good question. I wanted to bring up those rule changes today. So thanks to Jim for bringing that up. Next, take some more of your questions. A lot of them focusing on the postseason, what the roster will look like, the starting rotation, what pitchers in the minors could play a role. We'll discuss that next.
Winding down, the nights are getting longer. But the breeze isn't the only thing that's getting stiff. That's right, this episode is sponsored by BlueChew. Guys, we all know that confidence can take you far in life, and it's especially true in the bedroom when it's time to step up to the plate. That's where BlueChew comes in. BlueChew is a unique service online that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, but in chewable tablets and at a fraction of the cost. You can take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready when the opportunity arises. The process is simple. Sign up at BlueChew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. With BlueChew, men everywhere are excited to see the postman because when your package arrives, your package arrives. Go to BlueChew.com and use the promo code LOCKEDON to get a free month's supply and just pay $5 in shipping. That's BlueChew.com, promo code LOCKEDON for your first month for free.
Continuing this mailbag episode, got a couple of questions here about the postseason. First of which comes from Coach Gordon Bombay. Love that name on Twitter. He said, what AAA arms make the playoff roster? So I don't know if this is going to be the answer that Coach Bombay was looking for, but you got to consider what guys are on the 40-man roster. I think Soroka could be on the postseason roster. I think Kyle Muller would be a great addition to the postseason roster, giving you another left-handed arm who can pitch multiple innings. I think Freddie Tarnok could be an option, Bryce Elder, and Ian Anderson, guys we've all seen before. I think Coach Bombay is probably looking for some arms that maybe we haven't seen or really heard of. I don't see that happening. I don't see a need for it. I mean, the Braves bullpen is pretty set as it is. We got Jansen, Iglesias, Minter, Matzik, McHugh. I mean, you already pretty much have your guys you can depend on. You add some veterans like Soroka, like Anderson, Muller. No, Muller's not necessarily a veteran, but guys who have big league experience. I think, that could just add some depth to it. So I don't really see a need this year to really add anybody from AAA. There are maybe some arms down there, some Victor Vodniks, Michael Tonklin, that I think have some good strikeout numbers that perhaps you could use if you wanted to. I just don't think it's necessary. So I don't think we really see anybody, that we haven't already seen added to the playoff roster. Next one comes from Andrew Forrester. He says, will Ozuna make the postseason roster, and why hasn't Arcia had at least a pinch hit or defensive sub? If you would have asked me a week ago if Marcell Ozuna makes the postseason roster, I would have told you no. In fact, last time when I gave you my postseason roster predictions on here, I left Marcell Ozuna off. But you asked me today, and I think he does make the postseason roster. Look, Brian Snitker has gone on record and said he's part of this team. We're going to use him where it makes the most sense. And look, Rosario hasn't necessarily gotten it done. He hasn't ran away with that left field spot. And Ozuna, since he's been in the lineup, at least for the past week, has gotten it done. And even if he doesn't start, it does at least give you a big bat off the bench who can hit the ball hard. When he does hit the ball, can give you a home run. So it gives you a big right-handed bat off the bench, even if he's not going to start. So I will say at right now, I think Marcell Ozuna does make the postseason roster. As for your question about Orlando Arcia, I mean, I don't know where you're gonna put him. I mean, I could see I understand maybe the pinch hit thing, but Robbie Grossman, he's a switch hitter. He's really the only guy you're going to pinch hit for. You're not going to pinch hit him for Ozuna, who's also a right-handed hitter. So I just don't know where the at-bats are going to come for Orlando Arcia right now. So um, again, there's just not really a spot for him. Maybe I don't even know if he's a defensive upgrade over Grissom at second base. I think it's still a little too early to tell. I think Arcia was playing great there defensively. So just not a lot of opportunities for Arcia right now to get in there. But I do think he makes the postseason roster because I think he will be that depth insurance on the infield on the postseason roster. And then final question here about the postseason. Tim Finley says, who are the starters in a 3-game playoff series? And this is something, I've pretty much been tracking for, the last several weeks now in terms of what the postseason rotation could look like. And for me, it's pretty clearly, obviously, Max Fried is your number one. And I think Spencer Strider is your number two. And I honestly don't think it's even that big of a decision. It's just the fact that how can you put a rookie as your number two starter in a postseason series when you have a veteran like Charlie Morton? You have a guy in Kyle Wright who pitched in the World Series last year and got it done. But I just think Spencer Strider, with his dominance and the way that plays up in the postseason and the consistency that he's shown for the most part, and even look at what he did in his last start where just did not have it early, made an in-game adjustment, and then dominated for 5 innings. Yes, against, a subpar team you're not going to see in the postseason, but still that ability to adjust on the fly like that mid-game is pretty special. And what he's doing is just incredible. So for me in a 3-game series, it's Fried, it's Strider, and then I think it's a toss-up between Wright and Morton. I think Snitker is going to go Morton. I think Snitker is going to lean on the veteran, and he will be in a postseason rotation no matter what. And I think that's probably the right call. You talk about in the postseason how dominating type stuff tends to play up, and Charlie Morton has that. I mean, whatever the questions are with his inconsistency, he gets a lot of strikeouts. He's going to go over 200 strikeouts again. So for me, I think it's Fried, Strider, Morton. If you wanted to give the veteran the benefit of a doubt in a 3-game wild card series and you wanted to go Fried, Morton, Strider, if needed, that's fine. But I think those are my top 3. I think it could also make sense if the Braves play in the wild card. You go Fried and Strider in games 1 and 2, and you win those 2. And then you can start Charlie Morton in game 1 of the next series, and you at least have a veteran to kick off, an NLDS type scenario, which I think, could be okay. I mean, we all see what Morton can do when he's on and go out there and pitch 6 or 7 shutout innings. So I think that could be a good game plan as well. But that's certainly something I'm watching for over these next couple of weeks is who's going to follow Max Fried in the rotation and how does that play out in a postseason series. It's some good options for Brian Snitker, whichever way he decides to go. But I think that will be one of the more entertaining aspects to watch down the stretch is who earns that second spot behind Max Fried in a postseason rotation. All right, great questions. Got one more I want to read after the break that pertains to the upcoming series between the Braves and Mariners, and then we'll preview that series next. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. Find all of the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this year's opening week's games. BetOnline is also your continued source for all your sport wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Before we get to our final question and preview the upcoming series with the Mariners, I wanted to just give you an update on Ozzie Albies. I talked about Ian Anderson earlier. His outing, Mike Soroka, will be starting tonight on Friday for Gwinnett. Could be his last rehab outing. It got cut short. His last start got cut short because of rain. Could be the last rehab outing for Mike Soroka. We'll see how that plays out. But Ozzie Albies on Thursday, over 3, played in the field for the first time, which is a big thing. Again, no rush for Ozzie Albies. He continues to work his way back, but would love to see him, obviously playing in the field more, getting healthy, and start having some good at bats. As far as the weekend preview goes, the Braves will be taking on the Seattle Mariners in Seattle, a tough place to go and a really good team in the Mariners. Before I preview that series, though, got one more question. This one coming from YouTube, so make sure you submit your questions on YouTube as well, and I'll include them in our mailbag episodes. He says, any idea who will shine in the spotlight this weekend series between number 1 rookie of the year, Michael Harris, and Seattle Mariners, Julio Rodriguez, who could be the AL rookie of the year? Great question. Something I hadn't honestly thought about when previewing this matchup, but that is going to be pretty interesting to see potential rookie of the year winners going head to head. Michael Harris, he faced a lot of tough lefties in that Oakland series, and he's going to face a couple of more in this Seattle series going up against Robbie Ray and Marco Gonzalez. So I could potentially see Michael Harris struggling in this series. I mean, he comes into this series on a 14-game hit streak despite facing all those lefties against Oakland, but this is going to be a tough environment going up against some really good left-handed pitchers. So I could see Michael Harris struggling a little bit this weekend. I could see Julio Rodriguez struggling a little bit as well. His numbers worse against righties, as you would expect. And Braves have some good ones going, and Morton and Fried over the weekend. So I could see both guys really kind of struggling. J-Rod's actually been worse at home as well, still over an 800 OPS at 801. But will be really fun to watch these two young outfielders go at it. Again, rookie of the year candidates. Going to be something really exciting to watch in this weekend series to see who does shine the brightest. Hopefully it is MH2. Now, talking about this series with the Mariners, Mariners just lost a series to the White Sox. White Sox starting to heat up there in the AL Central. Mariners were also off on Thursday. They had won 7 in a row before losing that series to the White Sox, and the Mariners are 14-6 over their last 20 games. So they have been just as hot as the Atlanta Braves. And talked about the pitching matchups a little bit. On Friday, it's going to be Charlie Morton versus Robbie Ray. Really, really need Charlie Morton to be on his game. Again, I talked about it, the postseason rotation. For me, I think he's that third, could even be fourth man right now. I need to see more consistency from him, see him going deeper into ball games. Went 5 2/3 last time. Want to see him more consistently going 6 innings, 2 earned or less, being that top of the rotation guy. Robbie Ray's obviously been very good for the Seattle Mariners. They're going to be a tough pitching matchup on Friday night. We will have a post game for that, me and Grant McCauley, late on Friday night, so be looking out for that. On Saturday, it's going to be Max Fried versus George Kirby, young pitcher for the Seattle Mariners. That'll be another good pitching matchup and a fun game as well. Looking for Max Fried to do Max Fried things. Was great his last time out, 5 no-hit innings before rain delay, coming off a shaky outing before that where he just didn't have anything, still kept his team in the game through 5 innings. So back-to-back games, Max Fried only going 5 innings, last one because of rain. So look for him to go deep in the game on Saturday and put up an ace-type performance. On Sunday, not sure who's going for the Braves yet. We know Marco Gonzalez, another lefty, going for the Mariners. Braves have done really well against lefties this year, so hopefully that bodes well for them in this series, going against Robbie Ray and Marco Gonzalez. We'll see if Jake Odorizzi pitches on Sunday. He had that arm fatigue, or if it's going to be Bryce Elder. But either way, going to be a tough series for the Atlanta Braves. The Mariners are a really good team. They've been really hot, and they play really well in that building. I don't think it's Safeco anymore, but whatever it's called nowadays, they play really good at home there. I just quickly want to talk about the Mets. They'll go to Miami this weekend. Marlins played in Philadelphia on Thursday, and unfortunately, Sandy Alcantara pitched in that game, so he won't pitch in this series. However, Marlins will still throw out Edward Cabrera, who we saw is a really good young pitcher, and Pablo Lopez, and possibly Jesus Luzardo, while the Mets will be without Chris Bassett and Jacob deGrom, and obviously Max Scherzer is on the IL. So possibly an opportunity for the Marlins to pick up a win or two there against the Mets. Braves are going to need some help because the Braves schedule, as I've talked about and said numerous times, gets a lot tougher while the Mets schedule is very easy. So Braves are going to need some help from teams like the Marlins if they're going to stay in this NL East race and overtake the Mets down the stretch. But should be a fun weekend of baseball. Looking forward to watching all of that. But that will do it for this episode. Thanks for making Lockedon Braves your first listen of each and every day. Now go make your second listen the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022 episode. It is an 8-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NFL season, which starts this weekend. Local team experts from the Locked On Podcast Network, plus a betting angle from Lee Sterling of Locked On Bets, all combined to make one ultimate NFL preview show. Search for the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Again, thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at LockedOn_Braves. Follow me at ShortstopBall. Also, make sure you rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next time.